One thing I get asked a lot is, how can I reduce my stress? How can I stop feeling so stressed? And it may be that you're feeling stressed right now. I know when I used to feel really stressed, it felt like my head was about to explode. Like it was just running at a million miles an hour. And I had so much to think about, and I was worrying about everything and futurizing things. So, trying to work things out into the future, and then worrying about different outcomes and what I would do in different scenarios, and as well as worrying about all the other normal stuff, like about my kids and my family and financial worries, all kinds of different things. And often my clients report to me that, their heads just feel like they're just fit to burst with the amount of stuff they're thinking about. And you might be feeling like that too. So I hope that this short explanation will help you release some of that stress and tension that you're feeling, and maybe empty your mind just a little bit. And it's a little insight about how we work. So, one thing that's really useful to remember is that we can't stop the thoughts from popping into our head. So, we could be laying on a beach somewhere, in the gorgeous sunshine, feeling really chilled and really relaxed. And this has actually happened to me before. And then just a little worry thought kind of pops into your mind, and you're like, where did that come from? So, none of us can stop that. But what I find really useful to notice is that I can pay attention to that thought or not. And by paying attention to it, what I mean is I can start adding to that thought. So, say for example, that, and that's happened to me many times, but say the thought was worried that our tickets weren't valid to get home. Well, and I could start really stressing about that and start worrying about what we would do and what the workaround would be and how would we get home, and it could go off in so many different directions. And then those thoughts, I'd worry about those thoughts. And so we get to a point where our thoughts start to multiply. So that one initial thought becomes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different thoughts. And before we know it, we're really invested in that whole situation that just started with that one thought. When we start to see that, that's how our minds work, sometimes we do have worry thoughts. But we have a choice whether we interact with it, whether we add to it, whether we have a conversation with it, or whether we simply don't pay it any attention. Because the wonderful thing about our thoughts is if we don't pay attention to them, they just pass by. So they're a little bit like buses, if you like. So a thought might come along. So say I was waiting for a number 10 bus, and number 3 bus might come along. Well, I wouldn't get on it if it wasn't a bus I wanted to get on. I would just let it go. And the more we see for ourselves that you can do that too. So initially, I was hugely resistant to this. I was like, well, I can't just not pay attention to a thought like that. I have to pay attention to it. And then I began to realize that I didn't, that I could just simply ignore it and it would go away. Or sometimes it might be on a loop and it might come back about 15 minutes later. But I could still not pay attention to it again. Just because it kept coming round didn't mean that it had any more validity to it. It was simply a worry thought. And I would say so often our worry thoughts have no information in them that we can use. They have no facts in them. So I could have a worry thought about our tickets being valid. Well, the likelihood of that happening was so remote. Certainly not worthy of worrying for, a good deal of time about it. Now, how this kind of reflects now, I mean, obviously I was just being a little flippant there with a holiday example. But so often, our thoughts try and predict the future. They try to read other people's minds and, try to work out what they're thinking or how they're reacting, or were they reacting this way, or are they going to react in that way, or do they think I think this, or, and we get into these like little rabbit holes of thinking. And there's no fact in there at all. Like, none of us can predict the future. None of us can read people's minds. Just for two examples there. None of us know. And so when we start to really get curious, well, I wonder what fact is in there. Is that worth my time worrying about now? Is that worth my time getting really stressed about that now? And stress is a manifestation of the thinking that we're doing. We create the stress by the thoughts that we have because we're fearful that something's going to happen. And when we start to see that, and we can see that those thoughts have very little foundation, then they become easier to allow to pass. And the more we allow those thoughts to pass, the more space we have in between the random, stressy, worrying thoughts that we have. And so the more space that we have in between these thoughts, the better we feel in between. And we start to feel a bit more ease and a bit more well-being, because we're not filling that space, if you like, with lots of extra thinking that we don't need to do. The first thought has passed by, and then we just have space. We're not filling it with thought upon thought upon thought upon thought upon thought until the next worry thought comes along, and the next stressful thought comes along. And when that happens, we experience more ease and more clarity of mind, more settled mind. We feel less stress in our bodies because we're generating less of the thinking that is creating it. Now, we may not be able to do this all the time. Okay, there's some times when those thoughts can really grip us. So it's important not to beat ourselves up when that happens. That's part of being human as well. So I would aim for, I like the 80-20 rule. Well, if 80% of the time I'm not adding to my stressful thinking, then that's 80% more calm I'm injecting in my life. And so for me, that's a really good aim for everybody, to reduce that load by 80%. And can you imagine if you had 80% more calm in your life right now, and what a difference that would make to you?